Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, July 1, the start of the holiday weekend, celebrating the dystopian state of the United States on Independence Day, at least for those of us who prefer to live in the 21st century rather than the 18th. Quick note on COVID, cases up 30% week over week, 28 people hospitalized. The vaccines still seem to be protecting people, no deaths. But think of this, 266 people a day are still dying in the United States. And obviously that's way down from where it used to be, but it's still a sizable number. All right. Jun Starkey, we're 1 week out from the overturning of Roe v. Wade. There were a lot of demonstrations and so on you covered and wrote about. I just saw a poll that says 22% of Americans in an open-ended question now list abortion as one of 5 problems they would like government to work on. So where are we now? Talk about some of the downstream impacts, unintended consequences, things like that.
Yeah, well, the most obvious one is that now California, Washington, and Oregon have kind of become, I think it was called the West Coast offense for the rest of the country. And we're probably going to see an influx of people coming here seeking abortions. And I think that was part of the reason why the California administration moved really fast to pass bills that would protect people that come here to get abortions, to keep them safe, because a lot of states that have outlawed abortions are very litigious, and they can, be very quick to sue people who break those laws. So I think we passed that earlier this week, and then we've also passed an amendment to our Constitution that'll go to ballot in November to have abortions as a constitutional right in California.
And yeah, you mentioned the civil liability, and I think there's money in a lot of money in the budget. Is there not for reproductive health things for people who are going to Henry.
Yeah, I believe we have a pretty good budget for that. It remains to be seen what exactly that's going to mean with the influx, because we can't really predict how big it's going to be over what period of time, or what that's going to mean for people here that are still seeking abortions. But I do think that California is going to do its best to protect people who come here. I know that our administration is very dedicated to protecting that right. So we'll always be safe, at least.
You quoted Supervisor Hartman as noting that this is the first time in the history of the U.S. when they've actually taken away a right from someone, which is historic. And Nick, you had as an old history major, you were really going to the quiver this week. You were an old Jesuit, you were an old Catholic, and an old history major. You had a lot of that going on. But I thought you were particularly struck by Judge Alito's naming Matthew Hale as one of his sources on this. Who is Matthew Hale?
Well, Matthew Hale is a 17th century, he was the British equivalent of the Supreme Court Justice in England. I think in 1632 or some such date. And he was cited frequently, several times in Samuel Alito's majority opinion that struck down Roe v. Wade. And, what was really striking about the opinion is the extent to which it was rooted in history. And he argued that nowhere in the Constitution is abortion mentioned, and nowhere in, it was just not written about, and to the extent it was written about, it was seen as a crime. And he cited Judge Hale's rulings in which he saw abortion either as a crime or even murder. And Judge Hale has sort of emerged from the mists of time as a real hardcore, unapologetic misogynist, sort of most famous for articulating the legal theory that married women could not be raped by their husbands, because when you entered into matrimony it was a contract in which you yielded all rights to say when or if you wanted to have sex. And he wrote lots of long letters to, I think, his daughters or his granddaughters, telling them how try not to be too loud, don't read too many racing novels. Later on in his career, I think he sent 3 women, to execution on the crime of witchcraft.
Burning witches.
Burning witches. And
yeah,
he was cited in the Salem witchcraft trials in the United States. So it is interesting that, the history that Judge Alito alluded to, there is a whole other side to it. It's not just
well, that's the crock about the originalists, that there's one version of history. And I think that your piece did a good job of, talking about how subjective history is. In fact, it's not an objective thing. So anyway, good piece on that. Closer to home than the 17th century. Josh, I note that in Bill McFadden's column this week, your story on latest story or 2 stories on the Hot Springs Trail controversy got the most traffic. What's the latest on that?
So I think it was a week ago, the county posted signs on 11 homes in Montecito. And this came as a surprise to the homeowners because there was a preliminary injunction that Judge Donna Geck had issued saying, hey, nobody can do any work on this. And then the county goes and posts these signs that says you need to remove your encroachments from the public right of way. So the homeowners got very upset because they thought everything was in a status quo holding pattern until a court hearing. And then attorney Joe Cole, Capello's law firm, Capello and Noel, they quickly filed a motion to say, hey, you violated the preliminary injunction. And then there was a hearing on Tuesday morning, and Judge Tom Anderley said, yes, you violated the injunction. You should not have posted signs saying to remove your public right-of-way in encroachments because this issue is undecided. We have a court hearing coming up to talk about this. So I don't know why you did this. So you have to remove them. And he gave them 24 hours and they removed them. So that was kind of a big mystery. The county said they were just sort of operating under what they believed to be correct, which was that they had to remove the public right of way. And they felt that serving notice somehow would be this extension of what they originally felt, and it wasn't violating the injunction, but it was more of a procedural paperwork thing. I didn't quite get their logic, but they lost. It pretty clear.
And the judge was not happy. I mean, it was clearly the violative of
the judge said you violated both the spirit and the letter of the injunction. He was very emphatic on it. And, the county has some arguments that if they didn't do this, they would somehow abdicate any opportunity to pursue their rights down the road. I don't really understand the logic there, given that there was an injunction in place. But the judge, it was a smackdown.
Yeah, it was. And so, Josh, is it your sense that this was mere incompetence on the part of the Public Works Department, or is there something political going on? Say, a certain supervisor trying to stick it to the man. And by the way, what did Doss Williams say about this too, Josh?
Well, Doss Williams did not respond the first 24 hours that he had after the story was published. And he eventually issued a response, which was pretty bland and generic, but at least he didn't single out Newshawk readers this time. But what basically, it feels as though it's a political issue. I feel like, I mean, no one's going to say, hey, DOS or the supervisors are leaning on the staff to do this. But I didn't get any sense that the county was, at least the staff, the Public Works Department was really firm on making this happen. It sort of felt like it was the direction that they were taking. And so they did it. They posted the signs. I talked or I exchanged email with Scott McGulpin, the public works director, and he wasn't exactly fired up about defending the county's position. So he was just sort of stating things matter of factly. Eventually, Doss commented, and I updated it in the story, and he said that, hey, we just feel like we enforce all the time with people who put things in the public right of way. Why should this situation be any different?
Yeah,
And,
why should I obey the courts? I am Doss. Yeah, good.
well, he's saying they should obey the courts, but yeah, so that's what it is. I don't think a whole bunch of people, at least on this issue, are very pleased with Doss right now.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is, I mean, back up. I mean, it's an issue about parking on a public right of way, so people can get on the Hot Springs Trail. And there's been, a lot of people doing that. And you want someone, I think, to bring all of what I like to call the stakeholders together. And Doss has failed to do that, but yet Representative Carbajal parachuted in for that. That must have made everybody real happy.
Yeah, Joe Cole sort of outed Salud Carbajal as convening a meeting between stakeholders, agencies, to talk about what can be done to resolve this issue. So that was kind of a new thing to this conversation. I don't know if Williams feels as though Carbajal stepping on his toes or not. Carbajal, of course, represented this district as a supervisor prior to this, but Joe Cole, the land use attorney, is clearly sort of painting Doss as the villain and Salud as the compromise broker here. So that's some interesting politics. Doss, of course, ran against Laura Capps and won, although he did face a stiff challenge from her. So I think some of these people are gearing up toward, giving him another challenge when he decides to run, and this could be one of those issues they challenge him.
I don't think Doss is, pulling off the King Solomon Award here. But I would say that Salud Carbajal represents us in Congress now after having represented this area on the Board of Supervisors. And as a Congress member, he has direct jurisdiction over the Forest Service.
Yeah, that's
whose
true.
land this is. And this is like, even if you assume everybody is operating with good faith and creativity and everybody is Solomon, it's a hard one to fix. I mean, you have TikTok, you have COVID, you have an avalanche of people wanting to use these trails at a time when we're, high fire season and there's a great risk and the parking is a problem. So what do? It's not an easy fix. And you can't get there from here if you don't have the Forest Service actively engaged in whatever the solution might be. And I think Salud is the only one who's got the leverage to get them at the table.
Also, the only one with the political chops. June, Nick mentioned that the fire season, and that's a big deal, I think, to these homeowners, because as I understand it, some of them have had their fire insurance canceled. Others, the huge increases, and you got some, knucklehead on acid up there, starts a fire or whatever is going to be a big deal. But you had a piece this week about emergency response messaging, and there was a kind of a post-mortem about how that worked in the last kind of small emergency, and there's a lot of problems still with it. What are they?
It's very complicated when trying to explain, but essentially because of the way that wireless emergency alerts are sent, they rely on an individual's carrier and cell phone provider. So sometimes because of the disparities in strengths between certain networks, Verizon tends to have a much stronger network, and sometimes AT&T or T-Mobile can have weaker ones. The way that they bounce off of cell towers can be limited. So sometimes they reach a bigger area depending on the configuration of the cell towers, and sometimes they reach a smaller area. So they're just not very dependable because we just don't have the technology right now at this moment to make it more accessible to more people. So programs like Ready, SBC, I'm told are better programs because you have to sign up for them. You have to, give all this information about where you're located, and it's just a more targeted way of getting alerts in
But
dangerous situations.
but it's also via text message.
Yeah, it's still via text message.
All right. So there was no fix that was sort of proposed during this hearing about how this could be cured?
No, not that I noticed. It seemed to be more about using different methods, obviously like radio, news broadcasts, social media, and also kind of trying to evolve as technology evolves. I know that Verizon has offered to boost the emergency signals. I think it was 10 miles. So they're going to ensure that the people that are under Verizon get the message farther than the radius that the WEA was sent out.
All right.
But isn't the problem, how do you get the message surgically targeted to the people who need it and not bombard people who are outside the risk zone? And that's kind of the precision attack is trickier than the magnitude.
Yeah. But
Yeah, that's part of the issue with the WEA is that it is reliant on cell towers, and sometimes because of however they're configured, it can be difficult, and it ends up getting bounced to the wrong one, or it ends up going into the wrong radius of people. I think that what Verizon was trying to do was to just try and boost it as much as possible so that if you get an alert, so does your neighbor that lives a mile away and you aren't leaving them behind in a fire. But I think the best solution right now is use as many outlets as possible, check social media, check the news, listen to the radio, and then as technology evolves, we can update that system.
And have a battery operated shortwave radio in case the power goes out. Josh, speaking of news that stays news, there's another dispute about, Nick just fell off his chair. Oh, there he is. State Street this week, and Mayor Randy Rouse took the opportunity to opine at some length with a major policy address that I understand is available in leather-bound copies out of the trunk of his car. But what was he on about?
He spoke for 12 minutes and he went into full-on dad mode. Just very, this is the way, and I'm smarter than you, and I have this experience that you don't, and I've been through 127 recessions, so don't tell me I don't understand what's happening. It was interesting.
But it was about the parklets, right? I mean, it was.
Yeah. So I guess let me explain. So they're talking about the future of downtown and the promenade and what should happen with these parklets and these outdoor dining structures. And he is basically saying that we need to think about a return to normal, and a return to normal means everybody benefits from that public space, including parades, including retailers. And he sort of laid it all out there. And he said, I keep hearing the restaurants say, what are you going to do for me? And he was chastising them for not thinking about being more inclusive. And he used himself as an example when he owned the Paradise Cafe. He said that, hey, Solstice was on State Street. I didn't get a whole lot of business, but I knew Solstice was good for the community. And so we should do that. So he's encouraging the restaurants to not just think about their outdoor dining structures, but think about portability, thinking about cleanliness, safety, access, retail. And it can't be just about having a vibrant 500 block on State Street. And he talked about there's a vector problem. He said there's a vector problem in New York. There's a vector problem in Santa Barbara. We need to get in there and clean those outdoor dining structures. Everybody kind of got along, but his big thing was we're not really doing anything. And Randy doesn't want to turn back the clock, but he had a line that said, is returning cars to State Street the answer? I don't know. You know, he had sort of a line like that. There was a proposal that didn't get much support, which was opening part of State Street back to cars within those 13 blocks or 9 blocks, but that didn't really go anywhere. Essentially, what they said was we're going to study parades, we're going to work with the organizations, We're going to look at charging rental fees for outdoor dining. And we're going to continue to talk about this portability issue. Any new business has to
portability-
have portable.
The portability thing seems really kind of critical. And so the council said future parklets have to be portable, but the existing ones don't. Well, that's not
Correct.
get where Randy wants to be. I mean, wouldn't a requirement of portability fix most of Randy's problems?
Yeah, but these business owners are very much against this because they've invested $10,000 or more on their outdoor dining structures, and to make them portable is going to cost them more money, and they've already spent a lot. So they're saying, hey, we've already moved our space back. There's still room in the middle. We provide a service. People still want to eat outdoors. Work with us. And Randy's whole thing was, hey, this can't be the city council deciding what's best for restaurants. This is a larger conversation. And that's kind of how it went. In the end, they didn't really do much, but say all new people have to have things portable.
So
Well,
there-
what was interesting about it was how it was sort of a face-off between different factions of the business and architectural community who really saw the future of State Street quite differently. I mean, Randy, when he's talking one-on-one, will talk, I think, pretty persuasively. He said, everybody likes the county fair. Everybody likes going to the county fair on the weekend, but on Monday morning, you don't want to wake up still living there. And that's what State Street has kind of become. And I think everybody agrees that State Street is sort of in this sort of in-between limbo zone. And we have this grand plan, master plan committee that everybody thought we'd have whatever the scheme was a lot sooner than we're going to get it, which I think the first draft is going to be out in December of 2024. So there's a big lag in between. What do we do in the big in between? And people are starting to get antsy. And Randy has never made a secret of his skepticism about the idea of taking cars off State Street as being a panacea. They do need other ingredients, and they do need to figure out how to make the street hum. There are 3 blocks in the middle that are just dead zones, even though there aren't traffic. And they haven't figured that one out. And I have a hunch that's going to be a solution by 1,000 cuts, not by any grand sweeping gesture.
Yeah. And council also took up Nick's plan to have a moratorium on new hotels in the pipeline as a supposed way to address the housing, the so-called housing crisis. What was the vote on that, Josh?
Well, it failed. I think it was 4-3, I think, and it needed 6 votes. Needed 6 out of 7 because it was
because it was an urgency thing.
Yeah, it was an urgency ordinance, and it would have gone in effect literally Wednesday if that were the case. So the proposal was no new hotels until we finish the housing element at the end of 2023, because we have a housing crisis. And if we're going to have development, we should be having these developers build housing, not hotels. And there's a big keyless hotel on, I think it's Laguna, that's going in. And this is sort of like one of the places where it could have been hotels, but the developers like it's real lot cheaper for us. Sorry, it could have been housing. The developers say it's a lot cheaper for us to just build a hotel here. It's going to be a quicker approval, which means less expensive. So Mike Jordan was really out in full force against this, saying this isn't going to help housing because these spots where they're building these are not going to be in the AUD overlay anyway. And so we're not going to have developers who are building high density housing at these sites. So we're either going to get hotels or nothing. And Randy, who is, I don't want to say, he's not pro-business, but on this issue, he's very much about,
I think he's pro-business. I mean,
I don't want to just label him as like one of these just pro-business, but on this issue, he's very pro-business. And he's saying this is going to hurt the hotel industry and there's no evidence. Oscar Gutierrez, Councilman Oscar Gutierrez, a little bit inartfully, but he did say that he believes that there's going to be a rush of people coming to California and Santa Barbara because of the Roe versus Wade reversal, who are going to want housing. And so we need to do everything we can to build housing. He didn't quite say it like that, but that was his intent. So that was an interesting point that he was making.
I thought we wanted to build housing so middle-class people could stay in Santa Barbara.
I thought we wanted to build it for UCSB grad students who graduated and want to stay here in this community.
Well, that too, but I must admit, I was scratching my head over Oscar's argument on that one.
And I do want to say 2 council members had COVID, and there was only 3 in the chamber. Megan Harmon does not have COVID, but she has an infant. So people were all spread out. And I think that went a little bit to the just unwieldy awkwardness of this meeting, both the hotel issue and the State Street issue. It was a weird tone for the meeting.
Did you go down to the city hall, or did you watch it on Zoom?
I'm in full Nick Welsh mode these days. I don't need to go to City Hall to write my stories. No, I was not at City Hall this week, Jerry. Thank you.
All right, just checking. Nick, real quick, housing prices have gone down. So there's great hope on the horizon, I guess, huh?
It's a minor bump. It's sort of dipped a little bit. I think what we're seeing is that it depends on what set of numbers you look at. What the median price is it 1.8 million? Is it 2.1 million? But it's going down just a teeny bit because interest rates are going up. And if you want to, buy a house and you need to borrow money to do it, it's going to cost you more. And as a result, the gross overpayment that people were previously offering has kind of cooled off. It's still not remotely affordable, and rents continue to go up. So whatever benefit we are going to see from a dip in the housing prices is not trickling down in any way, shape, or form yet into rents.
And I would also note that the federal eviction moratorium expired yesterday, I think. Is there still a local moratorium in I forget where we are on it. No, June? No. Okay.
No local, no federal.
All right, and finally, June, not since that weird guy crashed his plane on purpose into the mountain have you had I'll bet, as much traffic as you did on the Ariana Grande stalker story. I didn't even know she lived here. What was that all about?
I think she purchased Ellen DeGeneres' old home in Montecito on Miramar. But yeah, this guy has been stalking her for I think like half a year now. He's shown up at her home in LA. More than a dozen times. I think the most recent time he showed up with a hunting knife and, held it up to her security guard and said he was going to kill her and her security and her family. And my understanding is that when he was breaking into her home, he cut several lines of power, which was where he got the charge for damaging power lines. But that was especially disturbing because if you imagine being a woman trapped in a house and you have no way to, imagining she only uses landlines for whatever reason, but you can't, call anyone, your internet's down. It's very terrifying.
Yeah.
That guy's going to get a lot of time if he's found guilty on that one. If you interfere with someone's ability to call the cops, that's a throw the book at them offense.
Really?
Yeah, that's a significant enhancement.
He pled not guilty.
Well, I'm sure the dog chewed the lines.
Dog chewed the line.
He tripped on the line when he was breaking in.
Josh, is Ariana the one you're always on about on Twitter, her music?
Oh, Jerry, please do not insult me.
Or is that Jade?
No, I don't.
Josh
No,
is a
I don't know what that
Alanis
is.
Morissette fan.
Yeah, no, it's Alanis Morissette, and she's a songwriter, and
I've heard her.
perfect, Jerry. Please don't compare her to the fad of the day.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. All right, real quick, Josh, who's on a podcast?
I have Patricia Stark, who's one of my mentors, longtime faculty advisor to the Santa Barbara City College student newspaper, The Channels. And it is my birthday today, and I gave myself a birthday present by interviewing her because I think the world of her, and we go through her whole career and talk about all the impact she's had on so many students over the years. Jun was unfortunately in my class, so she didn't experience Patricia as to the same degree, but she did have interaction with her. So she, we had a nice little showdown with Goswami back in the day, and she got to work with Patricia on that issue.
Is
So
Patricia still at the college? She hasn't retired, has she?
she retired, yes.
Oh,
So
she
she
did.
retired, and she's you've got to watch the podcast to find out what she's doing next.
All right, well, I will. And it's your birthday, you say, Josh. Are you eligible for, you're eligible for Medicare this year, aren't you?
I am in looks and in mind, though. I'm, at least 39, so.
Yeah, 39. This is what, the 21st anniversary of your 39th birthday.
Well, Jerry, you're an inspiration to me. So, I hope I could be doing what you're doing in a few years. So thank you.
Yeah, not leaving the house. All right, June, anything coming up? The school board's not going to meet for a while. I know you had a piece about the new hires and I think something about the screens. Are they're shut down? So in terms
Yeah,
of,
they're not meeting again until the 21st, I believe. So
so Hilda gets a breather from
yeah.
from Josh.
It's not a breather. It's just time to do research, Jerry. That's all.
All right, Nick, you were very prolific this week. I have to say, you must have churned out about 10,000 words. What else you got going? Or is it just all rants all the time?
Yeah, it's been much, go read a Supreme Court ruling and the dissent, and then turn that into fire.
This is bad. I mean, this thing on the clean air is just and it's just the beginning. Now they've taken this case about the North Carolina elections, which is going to put the state legislatures in charge of all elections so they can send all their phony electorates. And as you know, Josh, 30 of the 50 states are controlled by a Republican legislator. So happy 4th of July anyway. Things are really going great here in the US of A. So
Sounding really woke, Jerry.
what do you mean? And that's just I don't know. All right, I'm glad I'm old. Thank you for watching. Thanks, Jun Starkey, Josh Molina, and Nick Welsh. We will see you next time on Newsmakers. Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th.